This is our first panel, and we are basically launching a project that is going to happen every single month, and it's going to build on itself. So today we just have two panels, and this is our first one. It'll last for about 45 minutes, maybe an hour, depending on how deep we wind up going. And then we have a second panel after that. And then every month on the second weekend of the month, we will be having a combination of panels and speakers and workshops. So I just want to thank you for being part of our very first launch. And I'm so excited. And honestly, I kind of jumped into this and we haven't really promoted it much. So whether people come on and ask live questions or not, I'm not worried about it. We're recording and you guys will have access to this as well. Okay. And
Sounds
we
good.
will build and grow. So today I'm Michelle Oliver. If any of you who are here do not know me, and I am your host and moderator today for our panel of today. Our topic actually is perfect for everything that's going on, and it is the mindset of resiliency. So I'm here with Megan Gret Pratt. Did I say your last name properly?
Yep, you got it right. Yeah.
I was joking with her the other day that her initials are GP, and I just think of her as Megan Girl Power.
I love it. Yeah.
He brings that to the table. It's easy for me to remember. And Nicolette Walker Bowman, who is driving and joined us anyway. So I do appreciate, keep your eyes on the road. But I'm so glad that you're here. And so Megan, I'm going to give a short introduction of each of these ladies, and then I'm going to turn it over to you to start, Megan. But Megan Gret Pratt, it's not really girl power. As you get to know her, you'll know it is girl power. She is an advocate for, tell me if I say this right, but the way I think of you is that you are an advocate for online and offline what do you call it? Relationships, stalking, bullying, abuse, all of these challenges and problems that can come up in our digital and non-digital, our hybrid world of today. Am I doing you justice here?
You've got, yeah, it just is a big compass, but there's different names for it. But yeah, online, offline, tech safety, all those different kind of things.
Safety and like cybersecurity really is what comes to my mind. That is what it is. And then Nicolette Walker Bowman, she actually is I want to call you an advocate too, but she is the co-founder actually of an amazing group and is focused on wellness. Actually, the two of you are going to work very well together here, I think. So all the healthy side of that, and you'll be able to move from where Megan takes you from whatever is happening into complete wellness and strategies for that mindset, health, all of that. And Nicolette has actually built quite a community around that. So the other speaker, there are actually supposed to be two other women here today. And I imagine we will be reconvening later in the year because I'd love to have all of you together. The reason being is that the other two women also host and founded communities that have grown quite large. I don't know how many are in. One of them has more than, they have 30 meetings every single month that they're doing just in the Denver area. And then another of them has 8,000 members in that group. So I thought it would be really beneficial for them to hear from Megan, as well as how to handle unexpected things that can happen online when you're in groups too. Okay, so that's a long-winded introduction, but Megan, would you like to start and just give us a little bit more information about who you are and why you are here today?
Okay, thank you. Well, basically, I met someone and I did meet the person physically, in person, and was working with the person. And it turns out when I tried to leave the relationship, which was only a couple months long, he became a stalker. And I endured that for 7 years. And over that time, it was physical and digital stalking. The digital stalking started before I even left, just online monitoring, surveillance, audio, that kind of thing. I actually, at one point for my birthday, got a necklace. And when I was leaving, I thought, this necklace has something in it. I'm giving it back, because that's something to be aware of. When you're getting gifts from someone who you're not quite sure who they are, you never know what's inside them. But yeah, and so through a long experience, I just, when you got through the other end, just kind of became clear that I needed to do something for other people, so no one else has to go through the exact same experience that I did, and what to be aware of, and how you can be safer online and still not, not isolate yourself, but still be able to participate in life, but do it safely. And what to do if someone is monitoring your phone. How do you respond? And what are the resources out there for you? So that's
Excellent. Yeah, I know she has an incredibly involved story. We actually did an interview just the other day. So anyone who is watching this can also access that interview to learn more details, but there's always more. And I'm really excited about what you'll be able to bring to our conversation today. So Nicolette, are you available to speak? There she is.
I am.
Can you share a little bit about you and your story, what you do, and how you wound up here today?
Oh, it has been an amazing journey. Since 2014, I came up with this idea of transforming lives from the inside out, Healthy Transformation Nation. And my husband and I really jumped into this full force in 2020. And we didn't really know what it was going to be about. We knew we wanted to make a change and transform people and help them to transform their lives. But we're like, how are we going to do this? And over time, we realized there were 5 core values that people needed to really have a strong foundation for wellness. And that had to do with breathing, hydration, intentional movement, nutrition, and mindset. And mindset is really the first place that we start with. And we have an amazing room on Clubhouse called Badass Affirmations that we do every morning. And we have membership over 1,000 members now, and it has only been about 8 months. So we also have a membership, which is called the Wellness Champion Experience, where we help people learn those 5 core values and apply them to their life to have a strong foundation and then be able to level up to next level wellness. So that's a little bit about what we do.
Excellent. I love it. Thank you so much. And there also is a complete full interview with Nicolette as well that you will have access to, that you can learn more about her story and all of those details too. So ladies, today our topic is the mindset of resiliency. And I thought maybe I could start just asking you some questions, and we could maybe get into a bit of a conversation. Let's see where it flows. Okay.
All
but to start with, Megan has been in the trenches with, I don't know how many other women, but usually resiliency is required when you've experienced a trauma, right? So we're talking about these difficulties, and often it could be something that just comes out of nowhere, the unexpected. And when you have the habit of resiliency, it just makes everything easier. So could you speak a little bit to, I guess, maybe the surprise of trauma, like how things hit you, and what happens in your mind when because you've been through the craziest story that I have to say I've ever heard.
Fortunately. Well,
yeah, truly.
Yeah. I think for me, it was that I was in this relationship, and I really didn't. I just thought maybe he's a little bit angrier than normal people, or, but I didn't actually even know that I was in an abusive relationship, even when I was with him, until I spoke to an advocate. And it was an eye-opening moment. And it kind of shocked me in a way that I thought, oh, now I have to deal with a whole different set of problems, because now you're in an abusive relationship and someone else knows about it. And I think that my mind was racing, what do I do? How how do I healthily and safely navigate this? And unfortunately, the situation, I wasn't in much control of it. I can only control my mental state a little bit and the people I got support from. And I would say that that's how I kind of got through a lot of this, is through having some support system, using the resources, and definitely addressing the mental resiliency, I guess, that I had of the situation, because I think Nicolette can say that that's the healthy part of it. The mindset that you go through, it shifts when you're in trauma, and
Yeah.
Definitely went through a lot of, labels, mental labels, PTSD, anxiety, depression, all these different kind of things. And it makes it harder to deal with a situation when you're dealing with that on top of what's out there on the surface.
Yeah, no kidding. So Megan, I do want to ask you though, how did you make the decision to reach out for help? Because often, I don't know if it's often, but I know that some women, just humans in general, will not reach out for help. They will stay in these environments. And because I think it's so subtle, maybe at first you're crazy, you think there's something wrong with you. Like you said, maybe this guy is just a little more angry than most people. So how did you get to a point where you knew something was really off and you had the courage to reach out for help?
Well, prior to that, I've always had pretty healthy relationships, and I wasn't familiar with this type of relationship. And I think, unfortunately, I was the one who reached out first. I was mandated to reach out after a situation where the cops were involved, our very first situation. And they mandated that I speak with an advocate. And at that meeting, they're very aware of how how volatile these people can be and how hard it can be for you to meet with somebody outside their circle. And so when I met with her at a Target, at a Starbucks, and she was just, very kind. Hey, I know you don't want to meet with me, but, let's just go over the steps so we can check it off the box for the court system. And that was when we took this little quiz, and it was about 25 questions, I believe. And she said, if you have more than 2, then you're in an abusive relationship, you should get help. And there was 23 out of 25 that I checked. And it was, again, eye-opening
Wow.
at that situation. So yeah, and then she encouraged me to come in and meet with her again and make a safety plan. Like, what's going to happen? If you want to leave, it's going to be difficult, and you need to know what to do next, because often people don't know what to do. And that's kind of one of the things I address with a lot of the talks, is telling people that there's resources and not to be alone. Have somebody that help a friend spot, they're in an abusive relationship, so that they're not alone. And I think I really thank my first advocate, that she was there for a number of the years working with me and understanding. And, I think without her, I really would have gone a whole different way. I don't know how far I would have gone into that relationship.
And
So.
this is where you're serving now. So you're stepping up to be her to some degree, right? For others,
Right.
Because without the self-awareness, we're lost. And
Yeah.
having another human to give you some perspective, like especially someone that is educated and you can see the signs and everything. So that's huge. I don't know what happened to Nicolette. I was about to ask her a question, but
No,
I'm sure she'll be back. So what I was going to ask her a little bit about self-awareness, but then you had a checklist, and that brought more self-awareness to you, where you're like, okay, but right from there, you went into action. Okay, let me see if I can
perfect.
ask her a quick question. Nicolette, are you there? Are you back with us? If she is, she's on.
Can you hear me? Is
Yeah,
this okay?
You were muted. Yeah, I know. I kind of feel like we are on Clubhouse. We're just like on the visual version of Clubhouse. People go in and out, So
I know my reception.
yeah. Well, I appreciate you being with us because I know this is a challenging day for what you're going through as well. And I really appreciate you showing up. So I don't know if you heard all about everything Megan was sharing, but I would like to ask you if you could speak a little bit to the idea of self-awareness as Megan was going through, being aware of what's going on, really finding words for what was going on through the checklist, identifying the problems, and then immediately moving into the solution. Like, what are the actions? Could you speak a little bit to self-awareness around our needs in terms of mindset?
Definitely. I actually was in a domestic violence relationship myself. And so I resonate with a lot of what was going on. One thing I realized is that when I'm loving somebody and they're hitting me, they must not like me very much. And they not only don't like me very much, but they don't like themselves very much either. And a lot of the things that I realized in this situation that I was in with my son's father, because he not only abused my eldest son when he was in utero. He kneed me in the stomach when I was 5.5 months pregnant.
Oh.
And so he even disliked his own child because he didn't like who he was as a person. He didn't like what happened to him as a child. And a lot of the things that I've come to realize over the years is that when we put everything and everyone ahead of ourselves, we are so lost in the drama of life. We don't take pause or even realize that we have needs and we need to be loved. We need to be cared for, all of this stuff, but we're so busy giving to everyone else but ourselves. And when I stopped doing that and I started giving a little bit to myself and investing a little bit of time in me, that's when things started to make a shift and change in my life, in my world, and also within my soul, truly, because I was pretty empty for a long time. I was very directionless. I was very fractured and broken. And it took time to repair that, of being aware of it, recognizing these different things about, I'm not liked very much if someone's hitting me. That was like, the red flag, obviously. But the bottom line of becoming aware of your surroundings is taking a moment for yourself. And it seems like, well, that seems really easy. And it is, but we don't do it. So taking time every single day for yourself makes all the difference in the world. You're going to be with yourself 24/7. You are the best investment that you could make is in you. But we don't do that enough for ourselves. We're so busy taking care of everybody else. So that's the shift and change that I highly recommend, is to take a moment out of your day for yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much. So as you're speaking, I'm thinking here of the women. So I didn't not realize you had a shared, similar experience. So maybe we can speak from that perspective, because my guess is a lot more women than we are aware of have been through this, or potentially are going through it now, or are questioning what is the severity of, when you're deep inside of it. So maybe we can come from that perspective. How do you get from being deep inside of it to that awareness that you want to be cared for? I mean, often it comes from crisis, right? So what can someone do? Megan, do you want to speak to this, or just kind of respond to what Nicolette said?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's definitely important to, like they always say, like, take the oxygen mask, put it on yourself first so you can help others. and you do have to take care of yourself in that perspective, in that part of this, especially when you're in crisis. I think you're in reaction mode, into what happens, versus like you don't plan very much because you never know when something is going to happen. But I would say, like, keeping the awareness about, I think it's hard for people to recognize, because not everyone, I've met a couple women just recently, and they were in relationships for over 5 years with somebody, and because they weren't physically hit, they didn't realize that it was abuse, and they'd had the sexual abuse, the financial abuse, the verbal and emotional abuse, but they thought they just weren't abused because they weren't a victim, because there was no physical attribute to it. And I think that's very scary to think that, people are out there thinking, oh, I must be in an okay relationship because no one hits me. That's just, something when someone escalates, when they lost control of you, that's, maybe the next step out there, and you never know when that's coming. So being aware of the situation, being aware of the person you're involved with, and you know them best. So knowing how you can deal with that safely is really important, I think, also to know when people are asking for help, everything is individualized, and even there's no one set of rules that you can give every single person, because it may not work with that person's, abuser. It may just make things worse if they use that tactic. So you have to really focus on being aware of where you're at, what your situation is, and what you can do safely.
Thank you. Yes, that is so true. So maybe a place of default in the mind can be, if you are not feeling fulfilled, nurtured, the thing is, I think we forget that our homeostasis, our foundation should be one of health, happiness, and joy. Like that is natural. So if anything is happening unlike that, it certainly doesn't hurt to ask for help. I mean, you can ask for help before you need it, right?
Yeah. Oh,
And so
definitely.
many of us, we just keep going, oh no, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, right? So yeah, Nicolette, do you have something you want to contribute to those thoughts?
I loved what Megan shared. I thought it was really on point. Not one person is the same as the other, and every situation is different. And I agree. It doesn't always happen with the hitting, or even happen. A lot of it happens in here. The small digs, the little things that are said, the subtleties, the small subtleties is where it starts. Then you get into more of the escalation, maybe a push, shove, and like this kind of stuff, and like that, coming at you like that. And it's what it was really hard when you're in it, because you're so invested, because this person knows you so well, because you're so vulnerable, that they use the vulnerabilities to their advantage and use them as weapons and tactics against you. And that is a really hard thing, because we all have lives we've been through a lot of things in our journey, and we want to be able to be our authentic self with the person that we're with. If someone's taking those really deep feelings and using them as weapons against us, and putting us in a place of lesser lack through a lot of mind messery. I don't know what you want to call it exactly, but
That's
with the
good.
mind, basically, it yeah, right. It really takes a toll, because it's a slow process. It's a wearing down your confidence, wearing down your beliefs and who you are, person, and using your weaknesses as like I said, as a weapon against you. And so what that does is it keeps you in a state of almost a prison, because this person knows all of the stuff, and I'm feeling really bad. Will anyone else ever really accept me for who I am when I shared all of this with someone and then it's used against me? How can I be truly vulnerable with another person? Maybe this is the only person I can be. So it really, that's the syndrome. It starts off that way, and using those things against you. And it's very manipulative. And and I find that a lot of people that are abusers like this are very narcissistic as well. This has been my experience. So I'll
Yeah, agree. And Megan and I were talking about that the other day too, all the um, where these people may lie on that spectrum of narcissism. So let's talk a little bit then about resiliency. What are the solutions? What do you do? What can you put in place within your mind to come out of this and deal with it and expand and get better and grow? Megan, I'll toss it to you.
I think, I mean, it's very hard to get to that, turn that page. Like, as Nicolette was saying, it's just, they've worn your mind down. You don't think that you deserve better, or you're ashamed to admit to anybody else that maybe made a bad decision. And so getting in that positive state of mind is really a difficult thing to do. I think I'm very self-aware of my mental issues, or issues that as they arise, and then I just don't feel right. Something's not right here. I can't get out of my sad mood, or I feel anxious. I'm really a go-getter when that comes to that. I know a lot of people, it's really hard to admit that maybe something, they need help in that part of their world.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that, like, one of the biggest things you can have and to help with the constant battering from someone, an abuser, is have someone else in your corner. Just someone who listens to you and never judges you, and can give you that little spark of positivity sometimes that you need, because you don't get it from the person that you're with. And I would say that just helps bring you through. I had probably a handful of people during the 7 years that I was my go-to people, including counselors and advocates and those kind of people. But just having those people, you can download some of this stuff and not have it all pent up inside to yourself, because it'll wear down yourself. It's almost like it eats you away if you keep it just to yourself. So I mean,
Yeah,
it definitely is.
Those are great points. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, I was just saying, it's just really hard for someone to take that step, because for one, you have a really hard time just stepping outside of the relationship to ask for help. And if your abuser thinks you're asking for help, they're going to try to shut that down very quickly.
Yeah.
They don't want someone
Yeah.
out there giving you advice.
Yes,
So.
Exactly. Those are such important points. This is such a traumatic environment, and you're looping back, right? You've created those grooves, and we all know this science now. And so it's not as easy as just saying, okay, I'm going to get up early, I mean, a lot of us, we understand what to do. We understand, yes, it would be good to think better of myself, or to get up and go work out or get out of this, but we're so locked into that. So, and this is a particularly messy web, I guess I would say, because you're driven by fear and then pulled by fear. So even if you leave, like, something worse could happen. And I don't even know how much of that would be conscious. I don't know. So Nicolette, what have you to say to that?
landed there. Hi. Getting help for my situation. I didn't have the internet and stuff like that back then, because this was back in 91, 92 when this was going on, and then it happened again in 93 to 94, but most of 93. So for me, it's a little different. I had to actually physically go places to get help. I could make a phone call, but there were no cell phones back then. So I had to use a house phone. I think today, being able to reach out is a little easier, because there's so many things online than there was before. The other thing that I know, as far as not having a phone, and the difference of having a phone now, is having your privacy completely removed. You have no privacy now with the way phones are. People someone will grab your phone and open it now, and all of this type of behavior. But reaching out is very scary, because it's the unknown, and you've been in a place, even though it's been really not the greatest place to be, it's still a familiar place that you've been in, especially if you've been in it for a really long time. So coming out of this mold, coming out of this place that you've been in for a while and moving to the unknown and not knowing the consequences of what is going to happen if you do, it really takes a lot of self to dig deep inside and realize, is this truly the life I want to live? Is this even living, or am I just surviving day to day, white knuckling through, plowing through, hoping I'm going to live through it? So there comes the decision, do I want to live this way, or do I want to take a risk on the unknown and the possibility of having a better life? And that's where it comes down to. I made the decision, and my situation was a little different because I had a child that was growing inside of me that I had to consider. And I will be honest, even in that, even after he kneed me in the stomach, that was not the reason why I ended the relationship. It was when I found out he was cheating on me with a friend of ours that did it for me. And I said, this is not how I want to live, being treated. And I will say the other thing is we didn't physically live together all of the time. I lived in my car when I was pregnant, and he was with me through that part of the time. But that I had to kind of find a place to live because living in the car wasn't working. So I was fortunate in having a little bit of separation and a little bit of support with a shelter. So I had situations where it didn't really reach out, just kind of fell in my lap and happened for me. So that is a blessing, because I was not physically residing with this person all of the time. Getting the help, it made me realize that I had more worth than I thought I had. And it wasn't about me anymore. It was about my son and taking care of him.
Want anything further to happen to him as well, and the cheating and all of this, I was like, this is not the life. this is not what I had in my mind. My mind was very different. My mind was all love and hearts and roses. And reaching out for that help and getting that help, Jean Hurdle in Framingham, Massachusetts, was a beautiful advocate. She totally took me in. She heard my story. She gave me hope. And I was very grateful, because even though people in your life, friends and stuff, they're there, they're going to be in your corner or whatever, but there's always the shame that I was in it. And talking to somebody that had no judgment, like what Megan talked about, it was completely out of the loop of the relationship. It could see it so much clearer than I could. And even friends and family, that also made a huge impact, because I was able to see things through fresh eyes. So that's a little bit about what I did.
Wow. Megan, go ahead.
I was just gonna say how brave. I mean, that's every situation is different, but you can tell, that, like, that moment that you found out, like, I'm not done. I'm done with this. It's pretty inspiring. I hear every time I hear someone say they actually left or they're leaving, and they made it to the other side. It's a pretty amazing story. So you're living a better life. I mean, I'm not in a relationship now, but I'm still very wary about meeting people, but it's great to be out the other side and be able to help people recognize these different scenarios and let people know that they're not alone. And I would direct people towards advocates, the outside source, because the other part about the inside sources is they're always gonna be on your side, and some of the words they say are not as helpful as they think so. I would say one instance I would just as an example would be that if you're like, say I'm talking to my sister and she's like, oh, well, he's a terrible, awful person. The first thing I'm going to do, and it's weird that you do this in your mind, is you stick up for that abuser all of a sudden. And you're like, he's abusing me, and you've talked about abuse, but if you say something now, I'm like, oh no, it's not that bad. It's okay. And so, there's a thing to being a professional and knowing what the right thing, responses should be, when you're talking to someone in an abuse situation. So, yeah.
Well, I just want to make one comment and then let the two of you speak more. I think it is this idea of healing through helping is what I call it. Really what that does, like even with your child, when it allows us to expand our perception beyond being inside of something, right? So I just find that that is a very interesting thing. We can't always do something for our own sake. And we can get to maybe a certain level when it's obvious we're being like destroyed. We can get to a certain level, but like, Nicolette, you recognized you had to have a bigger opportunity for your unborn child, which is, I mean, that's a huge thing. And now, Megan, you are expanding even more to get to the next level, and you will get to the next level of healing as you serve and help others. I truly think that's just an important point for anyone who's listening to think about. If you can't do it for yourself, think of all the other women, your kids, think of the impact you can make, because that can pull us in a larger direction. So, okay, so we're talking about mindset, and man, these people mess with your mind, like Nicolette was saying. So now you've got a little bit of awareness around freedom, right? At least something bigger. Maybe it's not full-blown freedom, but how do you stay on that path? Because like you said, there's something hardwired in there that's going to pull you back to actually protect your abuser. That's the Stockholm thing I've read about, right? The Stockholm syndrome, where you're going to protect the person that was destroying you. How do you get past that in your mind and stay on that forward trajectory?
Well, for me, I did have children. I have two amazing kids that was my life beforehand, before I left, before I got divorced. And all the time people would remind me that's why was my dream, I think, to come true, was to be on the other side and be back united with my children. There's always a little something out there, I think, for almost everybody, that a little thing that you want so badly that you can kind of keep going towards. And even in the darkest days, it was my family, my kids, that I really thought, you're not going to add to their despair. Like, you need to keep going on. You need to be strong for them, and you can make it through. People, experts have told you will make it through. And I think it was a long ride. For 7 years, every day, having someone watching you and never knowing if you're really alone in your world is terrifying. And it doesn't feel like it's ever going to end, because you think, oh, after 6 months, this person will move on with their life. And so 7 years was a long time. So, but I think that looking forward to something, you're finding that something that you want. I mean, even my other part was, how can I help people? I kept thinking that even when I was in like a dark place, like, I want to be able to help people like the advocate was helping me, be that, little bit of piece of light for somebody, and, let them know they're not alone. So I think you have to look for a little something. I mean, it may not be children. I mean, if you have children, that's a big thing to look forward to, but, just something in your life, and an advocate can help you figure out what that is in your life too. You may not even know what you're looking forward to in the world, but I think that kind of keeps you fighting a little bit for your own self.
Yeah, that is so, I'm just really struck by who you are as a woman, coming out to support other people and making this effort. I mean, it's got to be uncomfortable. And thank you so much for just sticking in there. Putting yourself out there is not an easy thing. So are people, can they reach out to you personally, or are you working like one-on-one coaching, or what does that look like?
Yeah, right now I'm working with Facebook. I'm working on just a site with different groups, because I work with like dating violence, tech safety, domestic violence, a whole realm of things, and having people enter groups, and then they can private message me, or my phone number's on there. It's called You're Not Alone. And I try to put like different facts or different things that resonate with somebody, that, the awareness, just always putting the awareness out there. So, yeah, if someone wants to reach out to me, I have lots of resources. And one of the things I like to do if I'm going to like talk to a specific community is get the information for the people, have it out there, get it ready, and there have a situation that day. Here's your resource. Here's what you're going to go to on your
Wow.
local level. So that it's really helpful, and they're not like, I'm lost now. You said there's lots of resources, but you haven't really given me anything. So doing that research for people too, and just, knowing where to find things. And the internet does help these days.
Gosh, yeah.
If you're lucky enough to be able to go safely onto a computer or go to the library. I used to do that all the time, is go to the library. And search for these resources, because there's lots of national things that are out there, and they can kind of point you to local, resources as well. But I'm definitely there.
Yeah, thank you from everyone, because that's huge. And when you're inside of the emotional nightmare, your brain isn't functioning right. So everything is too hard, and to have someone take you by the hand. And so I think that's amazing. Yeah.
Thanks. Thank you.
Nicolette.
Hey, one thing I want to be clear, and the reason why I'm going to bring this up is because it's so important, is that after I ended that relationship with my son's father, I also wanted to have a family. And so I actually rekindled my relationship with him. And we were together probably about maybe 4 months. And there was one time in particular, we were in my bedroom, and my oldest son was standing there looking up at the two of us, and my son's father was this to me, and he was about to punch me in the face.
Gosh.
And he saw our son looking at us, and he stopped. My son has saved my life so many times. There's no idea how powerful a person he is in my world. But I want to bring this up because it's really important to understand that if you think you got it, think again. This is work that really has to go deep, and protecting your emotional state, your mental state, your physical soul state is so important. I never felt that way. I used to feel like, oh, I got this, I felt like smart and all this stuff, but man, look what happened, right? And I ended up getting pregnant again. So my sons have the same father. And after that episode, and I went away to visit my mom, he broke into my apartment while I was gone, and I knew he had. And that was it. That was the end of it. Between spending time with my mom and being physically away in New York, away from him, kind of got my head cleared up a little bit. And I realized this isn't it. And it was probably about a month later, I found out I was pregnant with our second son. And the beautiful part about that is I have no regrets. I have 2 beautiful boys. I am very grateful. The other thing that I want to give hope about is that I am married to the most amazing man on the planet. He is such a loving, caring man. And I waited 47 years to get married. I was very selective. I wasn't going to settle for anything less, because I started realizing how much my worth was over the years by having a friendship with my husband and the way he treated me. And I also knew not everyone is like my son's father. Not all men are like that. And I always had that in my head and knew that. So when I became friends with my husband, it was quite an amazing journey of going through cancer treatments and having this man take me every 3 weeks for over a year. I thought, this man is a good man. This is a caring, loving, giving, compassionate, empathetic man. And we ended up having a relationship years later, and now we are married and we're going on our 5th year of marriage. So I want to give that hope that what you invest in, you know what I mean? You start investing in you and in your life, and what you truly desire deep inside, you can have. It just takes a little bit of work and a little bit of time and patience. A lot of patience, not with others, but with yourself. So that's why I wanted to share that little bit. I felt that was really important to share. And for what I do is I have a mindset, basically what it is. It's an affirmations room, but it's a mindset. And what we do in that room is we change people's lives by helping them come from a place that is not where they want to be to a place they didn't think that they could get to. And to me, that is so rewarding to be able to help people on such a level. And it's not just me, it's a community of people that I lead with my husband. And we all give love, we all support, and we're all there for one another. Because I do believe it takes more than just one person, it takes a community. So just want to get.
Very powerful. Thank you so much for sharing. I have to agree 100%. I see this with my clients as well, putting them in groups, because when another human looks you in the eye and confirms new information, we need that, that's what allows us to receive it. So, very, very powerful. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And again, both of you being so vulnerable to benefit others is just amazing to me. And I love your happily ever after story. That's gives so much hope, doesn't it? Okay, so let us, we're kind of coming to the end. So let's have a few more comments about that, like resiliency and hope, like the launching pad or where you can go, something positive.
I think from my perspective, I would say I totally believe in the happily ever after, that, that I had, I think, pretty close to happily ever after before when I left my marriage. I truly, giving person who actually 100% kind of can love you. Just, things just come to an end sometimes. But the hope I would say is that I think myself, when I was inside of the situation, I didn't believe that this was ever going to end, because it really seemed like it can never end, never is going to change. It's always going to be this way for the rest of my life, and I can't take it anymore. And just sticking with it. I had a little necklace, and I won't say it online because it's a bad word, but it said "keep effing going" kind of thing. And it resonates with me. It's like, just keep going. Like, you never know what the next day is going to bring. Like, this person just happened to fall off the face of the planet. I don't know, but you never know what that day, what your hope or what your little light's going to be. And if you're not there, you're not going to be able to see it. So you just, keep trudging through, taking care of yourself. And, it's kind of a miraculous thing when you discover one day that you're like, I think I'm better. I feel better inside and out. And I never thought I could do that, because I have journals. And so I sometimes go back and I'll read it for some reason, for someone's benefit. And you think, oh my gosh, I was very dark. I was very sad. I was very depressed. And you can't even imagine it anymore. But I can recall enough that it's like, I'm blessed and I'm thankful for what I have now, and I'm able to give back to other people. So that gives me hope.
Oh, Megan, thank you so much. That was, very, very powerful. Everything that you two ladies are sharing. It's almost like you've got this, journaling is so important too. That's another strategy or tactic within your strategy of getting well. And then you've got this data, right? It's like analytics on Facebook or whatever. You can go back and say, oh, I have come. You can start celebrating that. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's a powerful thing right there. Journal wherever you are. And when you read it, that helps grant you some perspective.
Definitely. I think you're just sometimes so shocked, like, that's where I was, that's the way I was thinking. I mean, I had letters to my family, and I thought, wow, that was how far you were, like, gone. And to be at this other spot where now you're reaching out and you're sharing the story without the horrible tears, maybe, it still shakes you up inside, but you can say it without being fearful of saying it. Before it was like, I don't want to say it because I don't know who's listening. I don't want to have more bad things to happen to me. And now I just think, I'm going for it. I need to help other people. And there's better stuff to come from this. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I am so honored to have been connected with both of you. So I really appreciate it. Nicolette, do you have some
Give that.
closing words of wisdom?
Yes. One thing that I was in survival mode for a very, very, very long time. When you're in survival mode, a lot of things happen. And what I really want to encourage people, and one thing about the journaling is that when I look back at my journals, I don't recognize or resonate with that person anymore, but I love her and I respect her because she went through the trenches, you know what I mean? And who I am today is completely different. And this is the hope that I want to give to others, is that you don't have to be in fight or flight forever. Finding the stability in life, finding the balance, that alignment is what will get you to a place of not surviving, but thriving. And I used to be in survival mode all the time. Now, because I stopped doing specific things, I dropped alcohol in 2020. I started doing a little bit more for myself. I started giving a little bit more to others in a healing way by connecting with others through some of my pain. And that brought healing. Healing can come when you slow down and take a pause and a breath. And I mean a literal breath. And I'm not talking about this that we live in when we're in fight or flight, but taking that breath down and incorporating breath work into your day, incorporating some meditation. If you can't sit and be quiet, which I know because it's all rolling through your mind all the time, do a 5-minute guided, something that will take you through a step by step just to help you get through that process, and start doing a little bit for you. Wash your face at night, go out for a walk, connect with things that you enjoy, nature, animals, children, whatever it is for you, connect with it. And it will bring you to a place of you getting back to who you are and rediscovering who you are. That is so important through this process, because when you're white knuckling, surviving, you don't know who you are because you're just trying to survive and plow through what you're living through. So that is something that I really encourage, is just to slow it down. You're safe, you're okay, and you are loved. And tell yourself that, because that's exactly what you need, is love for yourself. So I'll just leave it there.
Nicolette, thank you so much. And this is Rhonda that's jumped on. She's going to be in our next panel. And so you're welcome to be here. Rhonda, we're just finishing up. We have had such an incredible conversation, ladies. My heart just soars with what you are doing and what a difference. I had no idea that you would have that common bond. And so thank you for taking the time to speak specifically for that. There's a reason the other two didn't show up. This was meant to happen. And it's going to really bless whoever needed to hear this and be part of this today. So I just thank you, and we will be in touch, and I'll be sharing all of your information of how people can reach out to you as well. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was nice
Thank
meeting
you so
Nicolette.
much.
Yep.
Nice to
Thank
meet you
you.
too, Megan. Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate the opportunity.
I just want to thank all of you. I would like to start with deep gratitude, because I know we didn't even have a chance to really promote this. I wanted to get the ball rolling. I tend to leap and then fly, hopefully, on the way down. And I just feel like it's the best way to get started is to just start. And then as the year goes on, you will have more opportunities to come back, to teach, to be on panels, and our audience will grow. And we're going to have an event every single month. So this is the launch and you are the maiden voyage. Welcome to Jumping with me. I really, really appreciate all of you. And I chose the three of you to come together for a number of reasons, but I'm going to just do a brief introduction that everyone on this panel this morning is an author.
Oh,
That's cool.
Cool. Yes.
That's amazing. And everyone on here is a presenter. And there's some other bonding things. All of you have gone through starting businesses, stopping businesses, pivoting, starting new ones, trying very adventurous little group, I would say.
Whether we want to or not sometimes.
Yeah, seeing visions and moving towards them. So today our topic is actually the mindset of resiliency. And I thought we could speak a bit to that. So what I am going to ask you to do is just do a quick, brief introduction, each of you, on yourselves professionally, if you would. And Rhonda, I'm going to have you start since you're right to the left and you've got that down in like a minute or less. She's so good at telling people what she does. So lead by example.
Sure. My name is Rhonda Scher, and I'm actually known as the LinkedIn diva. You know, most people are confused about what to do with LinkedIn, how to monetize, excuse me, how to monetize LinkedIn, and how to fill your calendar with those prospects and referral partners that you want to know. So I teach entrepreneurs and business owners how to position themselves as the only logical choice for the product or service they offer. And I have a system called Posting for Profit, which teaches anybody, whether you've ever posted or not, how to generate 2 to 10 appointments a week from a LinkedIn post. So that's what I do. And my tagline is, if you're not LinkedIn, you are left out.
Oh, that's brilliant. And Rhonda comes to us from Carlsbad, California, correct? Okay.
Yes.
Jody, would you share a bit?
Sure, I am a cuckoo clock artist, probably the only one in the United States and probably the only one outside of Germany. But it's a very unlikely thing because I was a television host and have done Home Shopping Network and have written 33 books in quilting and crafts. And I also am one of the world's leading experts on rubber ducks. But I did make the cuckoo clock for the retirement of Mr. Spinney, who was Big Bird's puppeteer. So there's, you know, everything sort of links together.
And you come to us from where?
North of Atlanta.
North of Atlanta. Yeah.
Yep,
And she
from my
has a
little horse farm.
Yeah,
Yep.
she's on a horse farm. Okay, Sylvia. Welcome, Sylvia.
Thank you, my dear. I'm originally from Germany, and it was so lovely to come in here and hearing Jody and seeing your cuckoo clocks. It makes me feel at home. It's so wonderful. So I am a publisher of a boutique publishing house, and my mission from my publishing house is to add women's history, their stories, to human history. Because for the last 7,000 years, her story was not told, only men's his story. So I'm a publisher, I'm an author, public speaker, and professional painting artist. And my challenge is to combine it all in such a way that people are not overwhelmed by my ever-questioned, multi-branded business and personality. And I smiled when you, Michelle, asked us to introduce ourselves professionally. So Rhonda, you are here the expert. LinkedIn is one of my weaknesses. I'm outing here myself. I probably need you. And for me, there is no difference between who I am in my business and who I am privately. And my husband would now say that's not true. What I mean by that is, of course, there is a professional persona, there is a professional performance person, and yet who I am in my core personally is also the essence from which I built my business. And the two words here for me are love and freedom. This is what I'm all about. I'm a loving woman and I long and seek more freedom. And these are also my clients I attract. Doesn't matter if it's corporate or private paying. They are loving people who struggle to express their love in this world. and who long to be more free in their creative self-expression.
Oh, that's beautiful. And Sylvia comes to us from near Carl Vista, right?
Yeah, I'm a neighbor from you, Rhonda. I'm in Vista, California, which is half hour from downtown Carlsbad. We first looked into buying a house in Carlsbad, and then we wanted more outdoor space, which in Carlsbad is a very rare thing. So we moved a bit more inland to have a big outdoor property space.
Wow, so we're neighbors. That's so cool.
Yeah, you're absolutely neighbors. So if I do say so myself, I think I have attracted amazing women for this panel. I mean, and I think this is just where my mind is going. We can go anywhere with this, and feel free to just jump in when you feel inspired. But when you said freedom, Sylvia, that is one of my top 3 core values. I really resonate with that. And as I was listening to all of you, I thought all of you have, am I right that you all have this element of freedom and creativity that you bring? And I don't see any separation between who you are. There's none of that like corporate, I am this at work and I am, you're bringing all of who you are. So who would like to speak to maybe, I'm thinking the mindset of resiliency, but how do you get to this point if you're coming from corporate or you're coming from usually a major transition, when you're asking yourself, how do you move from wherever you are to that sense of freedom, and with that, the creativity? Would anyone like to start? Sylvia.
I'll jump in, I guess.
Go ahead, Rhonda.
I actually did the corporate thing for a long time. When my kids were young, I worked in-house as a paralegal for a big company. And then when they, well, actually I did that until they were born. And then when they were born, I went to, I was very fortunate. I was able to work 5 hours a day. So I worked from like 7 to 12 every day, which was ideal. But for me, I really always had that entrepreneurial bug. I just never liked having a boss and, being told, oh, you have to show up here and do this. And so the first time I caught the entrepreneurial bug was because I said I was a paralegal. I jumped into actually selling prepaid legal, which was or still is around. Actually, it's a network marketing company, right? And that was sort of my transition into it. And when you talk about freedom, what I knew was I just didn't fit in that box of, having to show up at meetings and meet deadlines. And, I'm just not somebody that was really good with having a boss. So for me, I transitioned into that. But what I realized was, and, just like you said, I don't think there are any accidents in life whatsoever. And so for me, when I was networking, because that was my whole thing, I was like the networking queen, right? Never met a stranger. So I started speaking about, Legal Shield. And one day when I moved, I went to a new chamber and they said, hey, would you give our group a talk? And I was so excited, but they didn't want me to talk about prepaid legal. They said, we've been watching you. You're an amazing networker. We want to see, what are you doing? What's your system? So I don't know, I put this little talk together and everybody asked me one question. Well, when are you going to write a book and teach your system? So for me, that was how I broke out of it. And I wrote a book called The 2-Minute Networker. And the strategy was you're 2 minutes and 2 people away from your next referral. And then, once I realized, okay, I've managed to really lock down a system when you're person to person, LinkedIn showed up and I thought, oh my gosh, this is so easy. So I then transitioned into LinkedIn, wrote a book, started speaking. Since 2009, it's just been going. But I think that was it for me. I just knew I was not that corporate person. And interestingly enough, I have a husband who was climbing the corporate ladder, right? And there was nothing more unappealing to me than doing that. So, for me, it was a perfect fit. And interestingly enough, 2 daughters, 30 and 32, and neither one of them will go anywhere near the word entrepreneur. They both have really good jobs, but they love knowing how much money they're going to make and when they're going to show up and what that next level is. So it's an interesting question.
Yeah, I'm going to interject here before you other ladies speak, but I do think it sounds so graceful. You know, it's not like you had this major trauma, but what you had was an awareness, which is, I think, what trauma brings us, right? Like we're going to move towards freedom one way or another. And it doesn't necessarily have to be trauma. It can be, you know, a major life transition or whatever of some sort. But you carried that awareness and you moved. I love that you moved towards more of who you are. Like you just allowed yourself to keep moving. I know there's other stuff that happened in your life too. And there are one-on-one interviews with all of these ladies. So anyone that is watching this, you can go have a deeper dive onto this. But that's what really stands out for me, is that you had this awareness of what you liked and what you didn't like. And it didn't occur to you to just like squash who you were. You're just like, I think I'll go in this direction. And that's a creative.
It's a good point, Michelle. And you know, I think that, and maybe the other ladies can agree, that when you're so uncomfortable where you are, you have two choices. You either stay there and you're miserable, and then nobody wants to be around you because you're so miserable, or you get to the edge of your comfort zone and you say, okay, and I baby stepped it. So as I was in the corporate world, I was still, you know, putting a couple of toes in the water with prepaid legal, right? And then I was able to just say, okay, and I was fortunate because I didn't, you know, I had a second income, I was married, so that I could transition out of that into it. But the reality is that I would have just suffocated had I stayed in the corporate world. And I think that's the big thing when you talk about mindfulness, right? How much discomfort are you willing to endure? I was not willing to be with these attorneys that were so in a box. And look at me, look at the picture behind me, right? I color outside the lines. I was not a color inside the line girl, you know? So I think that's the answer, really.
Yes, I love that. Absolutely. Who would like to speak to that? Sylvia.
I would like to take the baton with the beautiful question Rhonda just asked all of us. How much discomfort are you willing to endure? Because I think this is a question which is on one hand the key to freedom, to know when it's your moment to jump or to break free out of your old comfort zone. But on the other hand, also, this is now a paradox, and I love paradoxical thinking, because for me, the truth is never one linear. For me, truth in itself is paradoxical. On the other hand, I believe that our success correlates to our ability and willingness to endure the uncomfortability. I mean, being in business, self-employed, there are certain things, even after 25 years, which are highly, highly uncomfortable for me, which leads to the resilience. If I were not willing again and again and again to embrace them, for example, marketing, for example, on a Saturday morning, get spruced up and showered and dressed and here, I mean, you could love it, but it's every day these little things where maybe my private self would like to retreat right now and stay in bed and pull a blanket over the head and not be seen, to step out and be visible with all floors, with the party of my hair I see from after, you know, hair drying it being on the wrong side, all these. As an entrepreneur, people buy products and services, but they identify them much more with us, who we are. If you work in a big company as an employee, you can hide much more easily. Yeah, Nike will sell shoes independent who is the CEO right now or what is a single individual employee is doing, if the CEO is not screwing up ethically completely in big time. But my point is not making here advertising for Nike. There's a huge difference to be an employee who can hide behind a big brand and us being our brand. And for me, that is highly uncomfortable. So my resilience is literally depending on my training and willingness to make myself feel uncomfortable. and I'm putting myself out here. LinkedIn, Rhonda, I so admire your expertise. I find LinkedIn a highly uncomfortable platform because for me, it is too corporate-y, and I perceive people as way too faked perfect and always hiding behind the other big new article. So few people are honest and talk about themselves on LinkedIn. This is why I am present on LinkedIn, but I let my assistant do all my LinkedIn stuff. And I know I miss out on a lot of potential, but I am personally, I'm outing now my age, I'm over 50, and that's sociographically more fitting. I love Facebook, even though politically, again, Facebook as a company had a curve of evolution in recent years to pass. But for me, I love to connect with people, even my clients, on a raw, honest, truthful, personal level. And on LinkedIn, I struggle to experience that. So going back to what you ask us here to do, Michelle, and I think you gave us a beautiful challenge. You ask us to intertwine freedom and resilience like two beautiful wines, and my yoga arms are not flexible enough to show it fully. I think they are both connected. As more resilient we become through the years of aging and getting a bit more wise, and the years as an entrepreneur, as more free we also become. If that wouldn't be the case, then something is off. Yeah, if simply through embracing what life and business and our clients throw at us, if we wouldn't become more free and more resilient, we would need to stop and do a big re-evaluation and start over, because something would be off.
Oh, excellent. I love that share as well. Thank you, Sylvia. And so what jumped out to me around that was bringing up the differing meanings of discomfort, right? And as we grow, we become uncomfortable. It's like, I mean, we see it everywhere in spring right now, right? It's the butterfly uncomfortable, or the beautiful bird hatching out of an egg. And that constraint is uncomfortable, but we don't know it's the unknown, right? So the discomfort of the lack of certainty, the lack of the regular paycheck. That I just got off a panel where the women were talking about relationships that were not healthy. You don't always even know that you are in discomfort because it's so comfortable, right? So until we stretch and get around. So I like this so much. Resiliency is related to being uncomfortable. And maybe Jody, I don't know, have you ever been uncomfortable, Jody? Maybe you could speak to this.
Never. I have no idea what Sylvia's talking about. That's what's interesting. Even if I just take this business that I'm in right now, it's when I've come up against something that was insurmountable. One was I went to Germany. I had them start making my designs, and then I realized it was going to take forever. I had to order 100 at a time of them to test a design, blah, 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 blah. And I realized I had to learn how to make cuckoo clocks. Now, that isn't like you can just go and learn how to make cuckoo clocks. So I spent 4 years. So that was hard. So talking about coming against uncomfortable things, I didn't know woodworking. I was a quilter. It's fabric versus wood. I mean, there's similarities, but I didn't know mechanically, I had to learn all that about making clocks. So that was really, really hard. And fortunately, I met my now husband during that time, and he brought a lot of the woodworking, and there's a cuckoo clock repair guy that I learned from. So we got our 4 clocks, and we were ready to have our launch party, and COVID hit. So then it's a whole nother pivot of what the heck am I going to do? And speaking of being uncomfortable, I was in extremely good financial shape when I started it. And I was like, I'm looking at the end of my savings. Thank God I own my farm outright. So every step along the way, there's been something huge that has happened to me. That's like you go, oh crap, is this a sign to keep going or to stop? Oh heck no, it's a sign to keep going. But that's the resiliency. And speaking to the freedom thing, I was in high school. I graduated in 77. So everybody, it's kind of like the guidance counselor. Well, what do you want to do, Jody? You have great grades. You can do this, this, and this. And it was kind of, my generation was on the cusp of really, you're offered being a teacher, a secretary, those kinds of things. And I was like, heck no. So I went to engineering school. But anyway, I knew, but it wasn't an entrepreneurial environment. You didn't start it wasn't, maybe it was just me, but it wasn't something that you did. And I always knew I was different. I thought I was weird. And I know now, and I discovered not long afterwards, that it's because I just do not fit in having a boss. And freedom is my main thing that I need desperately.
I love this theme, the unemployables, right?
Yeah, exactly. Unemployed, exactly.
So let's go around in this order again. Maybe we could. And Rhonda, could you speak to, so what do you do in your mind to, when you come up against something, I don't know, could you share maybe a challenge that you've had and how you handle this from a mindset perspective to allow yourself to be resilient, to overcome?
So, it's interesting. I think that we build on all of the obstacles that have come our way, right? And for me, I always start with the end in mind. So I ended up getting divorced after 28 years of marriage to the guy I met when I was 14, never thinking that was going to happen. Now, so when we went to the mediator, right, it was an amicable divorce. The mediator said, so Rhonda, when do you think you're going to get married again? And I looked at him and I said, I don't know, Rich, 6 or 7 years. Well, at that point, two things happened. Number one, I knew that I was going to get married again because I like being married, right? But number two, I never imagined that this man that I was standing there in front of me divorcing was going to be the guy I was going to remarry 6 years later, right?
Crazy.
So
Yeah.
I look at that period of 6 years when I was divorced, and I call it the gift wrapped in sandpaper, because there were so many things that happened. But to really answer your question, Michelle, one thing I knew, no matter how awful it was, and believe me, it was really awful, I always knew that I was going to come out on the other side.
Yeah.
So when I look at business, and actually there was a time, very similar what you were saying, Jody, when you talk about COVID, right? In this, around the time that I got divorced, which was around 2010, what was interesting was that nobody was hiring speakers. Here I was a speaker and an author, and nobody was hiring them. And houses were getting short saled, and we were in this really tough economy, and I had to pivot. And I thought, oh my gosh, what can I do? So I started with the end in mind. So for me, the end was, how much did I need to make every month so that I wasn't a supermarket greeter, right? I wanted to know. And so for me, that number was $6,000. And that was what caused me. So I started with the end in mind. That's really the story. And where I went from that was I got a life insurance license, and in 6 weeks I was making $6,000. In a year I was making 6 figures. And I realized two things. Number one, I hated selling life insurance. And number two, the way that I got all my clients was actually using the talent that I had, which was LinkedIn. So the answer, and then I created the system that I used to teach everybody else, right? So the answer to the question is, for me, whenever I faced a challenge, whether it was nobody's hiring speakers, so let's look at COVID. How many of us have had to pivot during COVID? I was this person that had at least one live speaking engagement a week. And all of a sudden now I'm speaking in a box. Like, this is weird. I can't see anybody. I'm just looking at these cool power. So for me, I think the mindset is, I can do this, I can pivot, and know where you want to end up. Because if you don't know what your end goal is, you are never going to get there, and I will just kind of give you the one little side note, which is interesting. I remember in January of 2015, I was sitting in my therapist's office, and I said to her, if somebody had a magic wand, all I want to do is be married to Bob again. And she looked at me and she said, Rhonda, you're engaged to somebody else, which I was, and you need to get on your own 2 feet financially. And I thought, okay. But I knew what I wanted. I actually voiced it. I actually said it out loud. So jokingly, I called my husband, because we were on good terms, and I said, hey, just for giggles, if I was available and you were available, would you date me? And his answer was, no effing way. I'm like, okay, well, thanks for letting me know. And in April or May, it was May of 2015, I had gotten out of that relationship. I reconnected with my husband. And the first thing we said was, well, if we're going to try this again, it's only if we're both, if we're going to get married. He said, well, that's the only way I would do it. And in February of 2016, we remarried. So where did I start? I started with the end. I knew what I wanted, right? I actually voiced it. And then I took action. It's not like The Secret where you can just wish it and it happens. It doesn't. You actually have to be willing to go through the discomfort. And boy, there were 72 awful dates when I was divorced. There was, a lot of discomfort, right? And a time when I was really concerned that I didn't know how I was going to make money. But the one thing I did have was an unwavering belief that I had skills that I could use.
Mm.
So my advice would be, number one, start with the end in mind. Number two, just believe it can happen, because if you believe it, it can happen. And number three, look at every obstacle as a gift.
Mm-hmm.
I look at my divorce as the greatest gift I ever got, because I wouldn't have the amazing marriage I have if I hadn't had that. Right. And honestly, I used to sleep with a baseball bat next to my bed and a chair under the door so nobody could break in, right? It was scary, being on my own. But I figured it out, and I think that's really kind of like what you were saying too, Sylvia. Just figure out, how do you get to the end, and then work backwards.
Everything you said is very, very important. And I love that story. The power of the word you're talking about, intention, start with the end in mind, know that it's going to work out. Like there's this general belief. And all I can think is the sandpaper you were talking about must have been the 72 dates, because that is that can be like sandpaper, refining you to
that. And the other part of it was excuse me, the other part of it was too, really the relationship with my daughters, that was really, really, really challenging. And also, I really believe, it's just my personal belief, okay? Everybody that shows up in your life, whether it's a reason or a season, right, a time, they're there to teach you something. And every person I met was a mirror for something I needed to learn about myself, so that I could actually own it and change it.
Yeah, I agree with that. That is a great tool, actually. But I'm not going to say anything. I want to hear from Sylvia.
I thought it would be maybe helpful for the beloved viewer here live or of our replay. I looked up the definition of resilience, and I saw here a sentence I wasn't aware of. So let me read here from what Google defines. So resilience is a capacity to recover quickly from difficulties and toughness. So I think that's quite common and known, this definition. And now the second one is the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape, elasticity. Ooh, I love that, even though it talks here about substance or object, but the elasticity, because I'm so visual, I'm an artist, yeah. I can see that for myself, because when I had my breakdowns, which I had, you lose shape. I mean, I had moments where I literally broke down in a sobbing, crying, heaping, whatever bulk of human meat, flesh, bones in my master bedroom floor. And then to get back up and put yourself back together. I love this whole elasticity metaphor here of the definition of resilience. And dude, I have to develop that. I started in Germany in 1997 with my business. Lived and worked there for 10 years, then 7 years in Michigan with my New Zealand husband, a baby and a toddler, complete different world. My English was not fully yet developed. And then we stayed for 7 years, and now I'm 8 years in California, completely different culture. My culture shock moving from Germany to Michigan was smaller than my culture shock moving from Michigan to California. And every time, I mean, now we live in a globalized, especially through the pandemic, Zoom online world. But in the early years of my business, this wasn't the case. It was not that easy that my business was like moving with me. No, I had to restart again and again and again, and had gazillion different brands and folky during that time because of my personality and constantly loving to grow and change. So to share now a big breakdown challenge and how I overcame it, it was here in California after a few years of intense networking here and being really challenged by being here in this field where entrepreneurialism, I think, is born here. The whole self-help movement, coaching, everything I came from in Germany, where I was a pioneer and well known. Here in California, every third person calls himself or herself a coach. So on one hand, I came back home to where my industry started, but that made marketing and to position myself and stand out so much more difficult. So what did I do? I invested a lot of money into a coach, a mentor, and a branding agency, and developed a new brand and logo and everything. And I, at the time when I developed it, I loved it. And I'm going now to share something which is connected with a big legal battle. And I just want you, for legal safety purposes, say that I didn't sign the NDA they wanted me to sign. So I'm allowed to share what I'm going to share. I'm just not allowed to talk about the numbers, the money exchanged, which I signed a non-disclosure agreement. So while I developed that brand, it was a brand where I merged my German heritage by using a letter, which is the letter U with the two double dots. We call or pronounce it in German Ü. We say it all, Ü. In United States, this is not so common, and which I didn't, and my expensive agency didn't think about. In the online world, you can't spell a domain or anything with an Ü. You just make it just the U, or you spell it internationally UI, which Americans also don't know. So I had created the brand Über Women, which at the time was all about women's empowerment and a woman who goes beyond the patriarchy and the old definition. She is a Überwoman, the woman outside the comfort zones and definitions of society. Oh my gosh, how sexy, cool, and juicy is that brand? I started a trademark process. I worked with lawyers. And you know, when you go through a trademark process, there is a phase where the public or other companies can show up and wave their no, stop sign. You can't use that brand. Guess which big player, a global company, suddenly showed up? I'm a single entrepreneur woman focusing on that time on coaching, and suddenly the car taxi driving company Uber showed up with the lawyer and said, stop, Sylvia, you can't use that brand. So that was the moment, and this is, I think, now the moment everyone knows, where your body, your ego, your fear, your brain, just you go in this physical reaction. I mean, there was fear present. I'm very honest here. When my attorney, my trademark attorney, sent me the email, Sylvia, she didn't say the F word, but she said it in more polite words, Uber showed up and they claim you can't have the brand, it's theirs. So my first reaction was to push against. What? They are a car company, or by self-definition, an IT company creating this amazing app. What do they have to do with coaching? And she said, so this is a big thing now here about fear. Her fear was bigger than my one. My attorney, she was like, Sylvia, even if you are right legally, they have more lawyers, they have more money, they have no breath. This is like David and Goliath. You can't win against me. You are not David. Yeah, this is Goliath, and you. So she was having a breakdown, and so now I did what I always do. This is my beloved viewer here. The 3 steps I have. I love it. Wanda, you had your 3 steps. These are my 3 steps. When I get challenged and I feel fear, panic, my heart beating, my stomach feeling this, for me, it's an energetic, as if someone has kicked me in my solar plexus. And I feel a bit nauseac. My heart starts beating, sweat is coming. Sometimes I feel a bit dizzy. or that my whole body's energy is just flushing out, the first step for me is always to care for my body and that state, physiologically, what's going on. I summarize it in the motto, I have to sleep a night over whatever I'm going to decide or do, to give my time, my body time, my brain time to settle back. Because if I act or make any decisions out of this state of, oh my God, Uber, it will not be the good and right decision. And also in that state, I don't have access to my inner wisdom, to my inner knowledge, my intuition. So step number one, care for your body, make sure you drop in and do whatever it takes. And these are different things for everyone. For one person might be sleeping, for another one might be walking, for another one maybe a bed and batching, kicking a pillow, whatever. You need to get out of that state, out of that triggered state. So literally in my case, it was, I slept overnight. I mean, I spoke with my attorney, I spoke with my husband, he was freaking out. Oh God, Uber. Just everyone had the same reaction. Everyone just said, Sylvia, drop it, just forget about it. They are too big. So I managed my body, I slept well. And then the next day, I just did a bit of research into Uber to understand why they even come to that. And to make a long story short, at the time, it was a year where Uber had a lot of scandals around sexual harassment at their headquarters, how they treated women. It was like a year where Uber was drowning in scandals about inherent systemic misogyny at the time. So here for public purposes, I don't say Uber has this issue any longer. At that time, at that year, all media online, it was full of it. So I thought, how interesting. I'm an individual small woman entrepreneur and they come after me. This is a cool story for the media. Here there is leverage for me. And so there was this rebellious, so like, I will fight. But I still sense, this is now step number 2, to drop deeper to my personal honest truth, which means for everyone like meditating or journaling, just being really, really honest deeply with myself. Did I really want to make a big social media public fight here with this company? Right. Did I really, really love my brand enough to do that? And I became super honest. And my honesty was, the brand Überwoman was struggling because of this whole spelling, literally because of the U with the double dots, people not being able to pronounce it properly, to spell it, the domain was UI. The brand was not working. I was frustrated with that brand. I lost money already with that brand. So I became completely honest, and a bit like Rhonda, you discovered your divorce was the best thing ever happened. I thought for myself, well, maybe this is now the best opportunity ever for me to get rid of a brand which was not working for me and sell it to Uber, because yay, they are bigger, they have more money than me. So instead of, dropping everything and running away in panic, I started a negotiation process, which would be another whole training and conversation. To make a long story short, and please forgive me, I'm not allowed to say the number. I started a negotiation with them. I had 4 half-hour calls. I worked up the rank of hierarchy because obviously the first small attorney had no power. He could not really make decisions. I got higher in the hierarchy, and I also, first day, I dropped my attorney because this was the other thing here regarding resilience. She was so scared. She was not on board with my strategy. And she was also not willing to give me the connections to these lawyers. So I said, okay, how do I get connection with them? Well, you would need to be representing yourself. And I said, okay, good, you're fired. I'm representing myself now so that I could get connection with them. And here, Rhonda, you will love this. I looked them all up on LinkedIn and reached out to all the attorneys and people from Uber on LinkedIn, which also they first, you can't do that. That's not proper. You should not. Again, it's like, well, I'm the non-proper doing the creative thing. Long story short, I sold them my brand to a nice, yummy, big sum, way more than they obviously offered at the start, and used that money to hire a different branding mentor agency and redesign everything and recreate a brand. So where is there the 3 steps? The first one is drop into your body and make sure you're not reacting out of stressed, overwhelmed fear mode. Then drop deep into your honesty to get to the place where you see this is not wrong, what's happening here. There's a level of inner knowing where we know a different truth. And then number 3 is seeing the opportunity, dropping beyond. I mean, hello, from running away in fear, dropping it to selling it and making a hell lot of money, which I can then use to reinvest in my business. Oh my gosh. The whole thing was such an amazing confidence booster and resilience booster. I'm forever grateful to Uber. I use Uber when I'm traveling, so there's no criticism against Uber in my story. It's just a share how we individual women with enough resilience, we can be, like David and Goliath, we can take on the big ones when we follow our own truth. If I wouldn't have been honest with myself that my previous brand was not working for me, I wouldn't have been able to do the negotiation. And they didn't know that. So that was the big advantage.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, Sylvia. That's so much value you shared there. The takeaway in my brain is physiology is so, like, the fact that you knew, I really understand that. And what's interesting about that is that if you don't address your physiology, you are much more likely to just stay in a loop of repeating wherever you are. If it's in a dysfunctional situation or, harmful, you'll just keep going. So I really appreciate that you brought that up. And then look what she did. She moved into her frontal lobe the next day and started doing research. She got logical and then saw the opportunity. And that's just absolutely brilliant. There's nothing I could possibly add to that. Thank you so much. And Jody.
I wanted to pick up on something that Rhonda said about people coming into your life at the right time. Mm-hmm. And what's funny is sometimes it's people that maybe shouldn't have been in your life, or, but they're there for a reason. So early on, I had this boyfriend. I was kind of lost. I had been writing books of what I was doing, and it was like, yeah, I've been great, but it was really time to whatever the next thing is, or morphing it into something. And this boyfriend said, I was really into rubber ducks back then too. I was collecting rubber ducks, and he said, Jody, you live in a rubber ducky world. As a real put down, like I live in this fake world. And at first I was like, oh my God, it's like getting scared of Uber, Sylvia. It's the same thing. You take it upon yourself. Oh my gosh, I live in this stupid world. And I go, wait a minute, that's what everybody loves about me. That's what they respond to, that I've got this joy and I do these unusual things. And doesn't everybody love rubber ducks? So I canned him and went on and took that as my going forward. And it isn't that it turned into rubber ducks right away, but it was that joy, the freedom and the joy is what I needed to do. And then one of the things you said, Sylvia, was about the resilience and then the physiology. When I, as we talked, when you interviewed me, Michelle, when I all of a sudden realized this wonderful thing that I built and this business that I built, I was going to have to start over once again. It was physically, mentally, spiritually, what I do for a living. I was single. All of it was like, where am I? And so I likened it to, I let myself just go down. Like you were saying, sleep on it. Mine is I decompose. I let myself decompose because it's the crying, it's the grieving for what I used to be. I mean, I was big in the world that I was in, and now all of a sudden it's like, I've got to do something totally, whether it's in that world or not, I've still got to redefine myself. So I would let myself be upset. I knew I had to be an entrepreneur. I had to do another business, but I would stop myself. I would say, okay, I'm gonna let myself do that for half an hour, and then I've got to go do something and be productive. And I did, and I took care of myself. I mean, I did boot camp. I was out with my horses. So I took care of myself in every way. And that was the resilience. It was like, I'm going to get out of this. I know I'm going to get out of it. I don't know what the heck I'm going to do. I'm so alone out here on my farm, but there's a way through, and you've just got to do something. And that's what I did. Do we lose Michelle?
It could be. So, there she is back.
Ladies, no one ever rings my doorbell.
Oh,
I was like, wow, someone's ringing. I do apologize. So I missed the very last part of what you were sharing, and I don't know if you went through this, but I do think you should share part of your, I don't know, ladies, I think the relationship pieces are so interesting. And Jody, when you brought that up, like people come in and out of your lives, and if you're open to it, I know we're kind of running over, but at this stage of life, whatever you define this as, the wise years,
yeah.
we are exploring from different places, sometimes from a very protected place. All of you talked about like releasing emotions and, the physiology. And I do think that is so important in terms of resiliency, to allow ourselves, even the opportunity to see that there's a new possibility. Could each of you speak maybe very briefly as to your experience with intimate relationships in that? Like, where do you let go? How do you move forward? Because a lot of women are terrified. They don't know how to move forward, or they're so locked in. There is no resiliency. There's just trauma. There's just repeated trauma. And Jody, would you maybe be open to speaking to that? I mean, you don't have to, but everybody has like such a unique story.
I think especially for women, and excuse me for saying this, it's fear of freedom. I talked to Michelle a little bit about my sister. My sister's the opposite of me, and she went back to her husband for the money. And it has not turned out well for her or for me. I mean, we don't talk. And I think that being in a relationship now where my husband gives me, I was married before and he gave me freedom, but it was kind of on his own terms. Like I fit into a spot and I was a thing on the to-do list. And to him, that was freedom, but it wasn't for me because I had to sort of fill a role for him. And now, being on my own and being the person I am, and now I married a man who is just so totally supportive of everything I do. And there's no difference in the way I am between when I was on my own and being with him, other than that, damn, I've got a great support system, including his family.
So Jody, because a lot of these women will be like, well, how do I meet someone? I think it's really interesting what each of you have experienced. Can you share that synchronicity?
The dating thing, Rhonda, was especially if you're a woman who has something.
Ladies.
Yeah. So what Michelle's getting to is I gave up. I said, screw this. I'm not looking for anybody. He's going to have to come down my driveway. My driveway is a quarter of a mile long out in the country. You have no idea there's a house there. So it'd have to be the UPS man, right? Well, a rezoning happened adjacent to 50 acres adjacent to my farm. And all of us neighbors had to fight it. And so this other neighbor over there that I never would have met, he came down my driveway to meet the commissioners for them to see why this property shouldn't be rezoned for this development. And that's how we met. So
all she did was
speak
that out, to Rhonda's point. Okay. She was like, well, it's not that I'm totally closed. If he comes down my driveway, I might consider it. And then he did. Right. I just think
he did.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And the reason I want to is that we've all been traumatized, right? In business and in relationships. So the more we can paint the potential, the possibility, and the view to whoever is watching this, we are here to encourage, inspire, inform, to move in the direction that is more expansive and fulfilling for you. So Sylvia, do you have a relationship
So
Really?
this is a huge topic, my dear. I think please take note. We should make just about that a whole day
Yeah.
or a weekend. So I was engaged 2 times and both engagements didn't work out. Long stories. I don't go into that. Back in Germany. And they made me aware that when we women are entrepreneurs, we are historically a novum. Have there been entrepreneurial women in the past? Yes, but they were hunted down and killed and burned during the witch hunts. Because for most of human history, what we are doing now was forbidden for women to own their own money, to vote. In Germany, I don't know the date in the United States, but in Germany till 1967 or 74, I forgot. So let's say around the 1970, in the German foundational law, a woman needed the signature of her husband in order to be allowed to sign a working contract and make her own money. I know that in the United States, I think it was around till 30 years ago, a woman couldn't get a mortgage contract with a bank without having a signature of her husband. Yeah, and don't nail me down here on the numbers, but just recently, like one generation before us. So I think for us women, we have to really embrace historically, when we are entrepreneurs, we are novum. We are a species of women, which is historically scary because it's new. So to find a husband or partner or spouse, man or woman, whatever your sexual orientation is, you need someone, and I call them feminists, someone who has enough personality evolution behind him or herself to embrace a powerful, liberated, financially independent woman. Because factually, we don't need men any longer. I mean, seriously, yeah, for muscle power, we have machines. Yeah, for money making, we'd make our own money. Yeah, so for so many things where archetypal in the past men would jump in to do that because we couldn't, we can do it all now. But we love men, we want to live, I mean, and now not going into sexual orientation, but my point is, for me, it was very clear I needed a feminist. I needed a man who loves a powerful, liberated woman beside him. And I created that deliberately. I flew to a conference in Florida, United States, which was a spiritual conference where with over 1,000 people, where statistically I assumed will be my husband, my future husband, where statistically I assumed will be a man who is interested in self-development, of evolution, of open-mindedness, that there will be enough feminists. And long story, beautiful story short, we met there in 2000. So we are together now 22 years. We have 2 beautiful, healthy teenage boys, and he is my partner and supports me. And also financially, my business for a few years was not profitable. I lived privately off his credit card, which was difficult for me to do as an emancipated woman. And then things changed for a bit. He hadn't had a job and I paid the mortgage. So we are partners. And he holds my back, and he's my most wonderful cheerleader, but also my toughest critic and my coach. He is my everything, my biggest delight in my life. But it was a long, difficult journey to get to that point, to become clear what I needed. And the first one was I burned my list. You know, the list every woman has, how her Mr. Right has to look like or be or what to do, because I realized my old list was not working for the new world we are living in. And I wrote the list down, burned it, and flew to that spiritual conference with the goal to meet my husband there. And that's it.
Wow. I love that you have this artist side, and then you have this German side that literally is looking at the statistical chance of finding your husband. So it's really fascinating. That was a great story. I didn't not know that. And then Rhonda, we heard your story, which so here's the thing about the witch hunt. Anyone who's listening, yes, we can basically just say what we want and then it shows up in our driveway 6 years later in Florida, whatever, right? I'm joking. I'm just joking. I definitely have not fallen into that category. So that's a whole nother story. Wow, ladies, you all are, I just cherish everything about you, everything that you have willingly shared. You're taking all of this time out of your lives And I know there's a reason that we're all here together. And I know that part of that is really, truly just big hearts wanting to share, inspire, encourage, inform anyone who sees this. And again, I just thank you. All of your information will be shared with everyone who sees this. And we'll do this again in bigger ways, more expansive. We'll just keep moving out of our comfort zone.
Right.
Because being resilient is what allows you to grow, right? Otherwise you just stay stuck and wither away. So I do thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I look forward to connecting with you all again soon. And you have a beautiful, beautiful weekend. Ciao
Thanks,
for
Michelle.
now. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.